This video is sponsored by Surfshark. The last 10 minutes of The Mandalorian Season 2 finale yielded more excitement, more enthusiasm, and more joy among audiences than anything we saw in the big screen sequel trilogy, or in the 2 anthology movies for that matter. This isn't just indicative of the merits of The Mandalorian, which was made under Jon Favreau's creative oversight, but a testament to the abysmal depths Star Wars as a whole has fallen to under the reign of Kathleen Kennedy's Lucasfilm. With the conclusion of The Mandalorian's second season, the success of which had nothing to do with Kathleen Kennedy, her failure is complete. In this video, we will explore why just that is, by a step-by-step breakdown of how Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian succeeded in everything Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars tried to do, but failed to do so miserably at that. Before exploring the future of The Mandalorian versus the potential beyond the sequel trilogy. And finally, the one lingering worry with The Mandalorian, that it appears to lead to the sequel trilogy. However things play out, the future of Star Wars is right now on Disney Plus more so than on the big screen. This isn't just true for Star Wars, but for Marvel, DC, Dune, Star Trek, Mortal Kombat, Conan the Barbarian, Isaac Asimov's Foundation, and pretty much everything else. All of that and everything else will go straight to streaming, and to a variety of streaming platforms. Historically, audiences merely had to wonder when their local distributor would get around to releasing the movie they were waiting for. Now they have to wonder if their preferred content is available at a streaming service that is available in their region at all, or if they're geo-blocked from watching it. Well, modern problems require modern solutions, and there's ways around such geo-blocking restrictions. For instance, by using a VPN, such as the one delivered by this channel's sponsor, Surfshark. A VPN, or virtual private network, is a privacy protection tool which guarantees instant online safety and encrypts all data sent via the internet. On top of that, Surfshark allows you to bypass geo-blocking restrictions by changing the country you access the internet from, which also gives you access to 15 different Netflix libraries by simply changing your virtual location. Say that for some reason you want to see what Star Trek Discovery is all about, but getting CBS All Access isn't an option. Well, by simply changing your location, you can access it from one of the international Netflix libraries, where you can also get DC movies not currently available on HBO Max. One of the advantages with Surfshark over many other VPN providers is that it allows one account to be used on unlimited devices. That's part of the reason why Surfshark is the VPN of our choice, and it gets even better. If you type in the code MIDNIGHT when ordering, that triggers an exclusive offer which you now get 84% off the normal list price, plus 4 extra months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Do check out the link in the description below for further details and to order. With that, let's explore all the venues where Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian succeeded, but where Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars failed. Let's begin with something that is not immediately obvious on screen, but that is blatantly obvious even with a cursory glance at what is happening behind the scenes. So far, during Kathleen Kennedy's reign, a total of 5 movies have been released, which are credited to 4 different directors, namely J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams again, Gareth Edwards, and Ron Howard. However, the reason J.J. Abrams directed 2 movies is because Colin Trevorrow dropped out from directing the original iteration of Episode 9, after Rian Johnson's subverting of expectations left it nowhere to go, while Gareth Edwards' Rogue One was subject to extensive reshoots courtesy of Tony Gilroy, and Ron Howard came in at the last minute to remake original directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller's Solo, which was 80% in the can. On top of that, Josh Trank as well as James Mangold was hired and then fired from the Boba Fett Solo movie. Note that Mangold is currently working on Indiana Jones 5 for Lucasfilm. Benioff and Weiss were hired and then fired from a whole trilogy of their own, and it doesn't appear that Rian Johnson is getting his trilogy anytime soon, since the only film scheduled is Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron for 2023. What that translates to is a revolving door of filmmakers. The statistics actually say that if you're hired to direct a Star Wars movie, you're actually more likely to be fired from it than actually be the credited director in the end. That's chaos behind the scenes, and the responsibility for that lies squarely at the top with Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm head honcho. Addressing this situation, which raised so many eyebrows in Hollywood that it actually needed to be addressed, Kathleen Kennedy told Rolling Stone magazine that every one of these movies is a particularly hard nut to crack. There's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels.
You serious?
We don't have anything other than passionate storytellers who get together and talk about what the next iteration might be. You start by talking to filmmakers who you think exhibit the sensibilities that you're looking for. And I would argue that the list is very small. People who really do have the sensibilities about these kind of movies, and then the experience and the ability to handle how enormous a job these movies are. So we try to be as thoughtful as we possibly can about making those choices. I would also argue that sometimes people get involved in the normal development process and then they realize, oh my god, this is so much more than I ever imagined. So it's pretty common when you're working on movies, you're not making choices and decisions that necessarily work out exactly the way you want from the get-go. This behind-the-scenes failure is no doubt a big part of the reason why Bob Iger recruited Jon Favreau to creatively steer things in the right direction with The Mandalorian. On his watch, high-profile directors like not just Favreau himself, but Robert Rodriguez, Peyton Reed, and Taika Waititi, as well as up-and-comers like Rick Famuyiwa, Bryce Dallas Howard, Deborah Chow, and even Carl Weathers have all directed episodes, without any issues making headlines. One of the things Kathleen Kennedy set out to do was making Star Wars more diverse, so as to expand the audience base. The thinking was that the more people who could see themselves on screen, the more people would flock to theaters. However, the practical implementation of that thinking left something to be desired. First and foremost, the Force was made female, while new lead character and likely Kathleen Kennedy's self-insert Rey Palpatine was made innately perfect at everything. So that nothing could detract from her perfection, the OG heroes audiences actually wanted to see were disparaged and disrespected. So that nothing could detract from her beauty, one diverse new character was dressed in a potato sack and given one of the least sexy haircuts known to man. And so that nothing could detract from her Twilight-style romance, another diverse new character was paired with said potato sack. Another actress kept her helmet on for her entire 4 minutes and 30 seconds of screen time, allegedly for much the same reason. The end result was that of all the unsold sequel trilogy merchandise, nothing sold less than Rose Tico, while Finn actor John Boyega publicly spoke out against how the more diverse characters were treated. By contrast, very few associated with The Mandalorian have ever felt the need to publicly virtue signal. Instead, they simply made the series organically diverse, and they never disparaged any one character to highlight the virtues of another. Unlike Rey Palpatine and Rose Tico, characters like Cara Dune, Moff Gideon, and Fennec Shand became instant fan favorites. When the sequel trilogy was announced, what fans wanted and expected more than anything was to see Luke Skywalker, Leia, Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, along with Chewbacca and the droids, reunited on screen. Instead, the characters were divided and fans never got that moment. Han Solo was made a loser and a deadbeat dad. Luke Skywalker was made a walrus milk-drinking failure. Leia was made an NPC. While the whole 9-movie saga was retroactively made to be about the complete and total victory of the Palpatine bloodline over the Skywalker bloodline, to the point of forever ending the Jedi and even usurping the Skywalker name. To paraphrase Rian Johnson, expectations were subverted. By contrast, The Mandalorian subverted expectations by bringing into live action the characters that fans of the animated series always wanted to see, and by providing the Luke Skywalker everyone always wanted. The original plan for Disney's Star Wars theme park attraction Galaxy's Edge was to be based on the beloved original Star Wars trilogy. That, however, changed when Kathleen Kennedy had a fateful meeting with Bob Iger. In that meeting, she told him that there were way more Disney Star Wars stories ahead of us than behind us. So we really should think about, do we want to build a Tatooine and build what all the 50-somethings remember Star Wars as? Or do we want to build something else which is going to appeal to all the upcoming generations who are going to know the new stories? In other words, Kathleen Kennedy's intention was for the sequel trilogy to be the new foundation for Star Wars going forward. It was the worlds and the characters established in the sequel trilogy that would carry the torch and, for all intents and purposes, be Star Wars going forwards. This idea, however, was rejected by the audience, who let the sequel trilogy merchandise collect dust on shelves, while more moviegoers went to see the R-rated Joker than The Rise of Skywalker. Now, the sequel trilogy era and characters are dead. They last appeared in an animated Disney Plus special, and there are no current plans to revisit them or continue the story beyond that point. Not on Disney Plus, not in the comics, and not in the books. In retrospect, the sequel trilogy was a foundation built on sand.
I don't like sand.
And a false start. The future of Star Wars lies in the very past the sequel trilogy worked so hard to move away from. By contrast, the storylines begun in The Mandalorian will continue in the spin-off series Rangers of the New Republic and Ahsoka, as well as in The Book of Boba Fett. With this, Kathleen Kennedy's failure is complete. Her brand of Star Wars is dead, while George Lucas's Star Wars, carried forth by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, lives on. In fact, the one thing that lessens the joy and excitement many fans feel is that further ahead in the timeline, the misery that is the sequel trilogy still awaits. Not everyone everywhere was won over by The Mandalorian. The damage done by the sequel trilogy is so immense that for many, The Mandalorian was but a first step of many more required on a long road Disney still has to travel towards redeeming Star Wars. For others, the damage is simply too great and no redemption is possible under any circumstance. The fault for that lies squarely with Kathleen Kennedy. So it is a sad irony that Jon Favreau's success with The Mandalorian may yet enable Kathleen Kennedy to cling onto the role of head honcho of Lucasfilm, a position that is an open secret in Hollywood that she has failed miserably in. While we have heard that Jon Favreau is relatively shielded from her influence over the Mandalorian series that he oversees, her influence will still be felt in other series, and in the future, Episode 7 looms. Or does it? We have earlier reported on the rumors that there is a plan to remove the entire sequel trilogy from canon. Our good friend Dictor Van Doomcock was the first to report on this, but we heard similar claims, with more detail added from our own sources. Under Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm has become a house divided between the ideologies she brought in and the Star Wars fans that were always there. Because of this, there is something of a deep state within Lucasfilm, and the rumors, which again we must stress are rumors, so do take them with a grain of salt, suggest that hidden in plain sight in The Rise of Skywalker, this deep state planted multiple seeds towards removing the sequel trilogy from canon. So far, The Mandalorian appears to build towards it. Jon Favreau said himself that they're setting up the First Order, and the creation of Snoke has been implied. This would be a requirement, as The Mandalorian was set up while Kathleen Kennedy was still firmly in charge of Lucasfilm, which we hear she won't really be going forward, even if she has that figurehead title. To revisit Midnight's Edge's earlier reporting on this matter, we exclusively said that removing the sequel trilogy from canon would be a two-stage process. First, and for all practical purposes, the sequel trilogy era would simply never be revisited. There would be no announcement that it was no longer canon. It just wouldn't be addressed anymore, and no storylines derived from it would be continued. Instead, earlier eras, and then especially the era immediately following Return of the Jedi, would increasingly be mapped out. We reported that 6 months ago, and it is consistent with the recent announcements of Disney's new plans for Star Wars. Here it was confirmed that none of the multiple series and movies in development will revisit the sequel trilogy era. Instead, the past, especially the immediate post-Return of the Jedi era, will be mapped out by no less than 3 Mandalorian series. In terms of canon, Doomcock reported that the means to remove the sequel trilogy from canon was the Veil of the Force, which is indeed present in the official logo for the Ahsoka series. We again stress that this is a rumor, but our sources still maintain that even as The Mandalorian appears to set up the sequel trilogy, the intention remains to remove it from canon. The divergence in which it is cast aside into an alternate timeline just hasn't happened yet. To paraphrase another franchise with branching paths, the future is not set. Let us know your thoughts on Kathleen Kennedy's reign and the future of Star Wars in the comments. And before you go, and to help bypass quarrelsome geo-blocking restrictions, get Surfshark VPN. Use our code MIDNIGHT to get 84% off plus 4 extra months for free. The link is in the description.